Evan Mazza here, back for another edition of MazzaOnSports. It's been a while, been a month. I decided to take a month off from the channel, so to kind of refresh my batteries. It was after the Super Bowl. We'll talk about the Super Bowl a little bit, very briefly. Obviously, it's been a month, obviously, since and a lot has happened since in the NFL since the Super Bowl. But I'll talk briefly about it. Obviously, we got to get into NFL free agency and the huge moves that have happened the last couple of days, culminating or at least continuing, I should say, today with the Baltimore Ravens making a massive move, a unprecedented move that they in the history of their franchise, simply put. We'll talk about that. We'll discuss the World Baseball Classic, Major League Baseball, as spring training is still going, is continuing. The World Baseball Classic is underway. The first slate of games was today of the World Baseball Classic, is the opening pool. We'll talk a little bit of pro wrestling. Actually, I'm watching the New York Knicks defeat the New York Knicks against the Denver Nuggets. The Knicks are up 125-95 over the Denver Nuggets. That would be a huge win for the Knicks if they were to hold on and win this one. Looks like they will, up by 30 with 4:44 to go in the fourth quarter. Actually a 3 now, 128 now. We will talk about everything going around in wrestling. Huge title change tonight on Friday Night SmackDown, which probably, I think a lot of you, if you watch wrestling, saw coming. We'll talk a little bit about that and the road to WrestleMania. But like I said, I've been away for a month. I had to recharge my batteries a bit, get things straightened out between work and school. So I decided to take a month off. I was going to come back over the weekend, but after what this team just did today, I thought tonight was a good night to come back and to do a show. I'm looking to do a show again next week. I'm looking to make my show every Wednesday. I'm shooting for every Wednesday to do my show. Every Wednesday, I'm looking to do a show. That's what I'm looking forward to do as we go on into the spring and into the summer and into the fall once the rest of the year. So I'm looking for either next Wednesday, and if not Wednesdays, Friday. Either Wednesdays or Friday. I think I'm leaning towards Wednesday, but Fridays could be another day. So look out for that. But we begin today with the Super Bowl. I'll talk about briefly with the Super Bowl. The Seattle Seahawks obviously defeated the New England Patriots in a typical Seattle Seahawks fashion. They ran the football well. They took the points when they had to. Kenneth Walker, of course, won Super Bowl MVP, and he's in for a huge payday, it looks like, come free agency in a couple of days. The Patriots offense was just no match for that Seahawks defense. That Seahawks defense culminated what was an incredible season by their defense with an incredible performance in the Super Bowl, and they made Drake May miserable in the backfield. And they were dominant really from start to finish. It was a typical Seahawk game, really. I was someone who watched the Seahawks pretty much every game, and it was mainly because of Sam Darnold, because I'm a Sam Darnold fan. I watched the Seahawks pretty much every game, and every game was virtually the same. They had trouble running the football for the majority of the season, but they played until Kenneth Walker really got going down the stretch and into in the postseason. But their defense was fantastic. And they played good defense. They took the points and field goals, even when they couldn't score a touchdown. They took the points. Sam Darnold made some big passes, especially the Jackson Smith-Njigba. The defense took over the game. They kind of won the same way. It was the same way they've always won all season long, and that's how they are now the Super Bowl champions. And they are the Super Bowl champions for the second time in their franchise's history. Sam Darnold is a Super Bowl champion quarterback, and it's been a month. It's been a month since the Super Bowl, and it's still very weird to say. Sam Darnold is weird to say now. Like 10 years ago, it wouldn't have sounded weird, because when Darnold came out of college, I was like, oh yeah, we all said he's a top flight quarterback coming out of the draft. He's outstanding. But obviously, with everything that's gone on in his career, sure, it became a kind of a, wait, what? Sam Darnold winning a Super Bowl? No way. But he is a Super Bowl champion quarterback now, and I say good for him, and I think it's awesome. Good for him. I think it's awesome. Darnold is, to me, Darnold is one of the most, I think Darnold is the greatest quarterback career turnaround we've ever seen in the NFL. You know, there are other names, obviously, like Alex Smith or Alex Smith and other guys, but to me, Steve Young, but to me, Sam Darnold is the biggest quarterback career turnaround we've ever seen in the NFL. Darnold was left to the side. No one thought they called him a draft bust, and he was going around from team to team, and he got comfortable with San Francisco, learning under Shanahan and being the backup to Purdy. And then he goes to Minnesota, has that great year. They let him go. And now he goes to Seattle, and he has another pretty good year. And even though he led the league in turnovers, he still had a good year, and he helps the Seahawks win the Super Bowl. I mean, you couldn't be, as someone who's followed Darnold since his college days at USC, I couldn't be happier for him. And good for the Seahawks for the city of Seattle that they're now Super Bowl champions for the 2025 season. So with the 2025 season book closed, we open up the 2026 offseason, and the free agency is virtually underway now. Trent McDuffie was traded to the Los Angeles Rams from the Kansas City Chiefs. For shocker, the Los Angeles Rams traded a first-round draft pick because the Los Angeles Rams do not care about first-round draft picks, as we've known. And it seems like now that has gotten the ball rolling in the offseason with the free agency a couple of days away, the non-tampering period on Monday. That Trent McDuffie trade seemed to have been the start, the thing that got the ball rolling here. Because today, as the New York Knicks are about to wrap up their 140-100 win over the Denver Nuggets in Denver, today the Baltimore Ravens did something just out of the ordinary. They have literally have never done this in their history. Never have done this. They have never traded a first-round pick for a veteran player. Not a rookie, but a veteran player. Not trading first-round picks to get a draft pick, in that draft, but a rookie, but a veteran player. A veteran, not just a veteran player, a established premier player in the game. They traded two first-round draft picks for Maxx Crosby, one of the more premier pass rushers in the game. The Baltimore Ravens have needed a pass rusher like this for a while. They've been looking. Now, again, the Ravens have had a good pass rush over the years. Last year being the exception. This past year being the exception. But over the years, the Ravens have had a good pass rush. Let's not get it twisted. This is still the same team that led the league in sacks just a few years ago. But they hadn't had that premier, top-of-the-line, in his prime pass rusher really since Suggs was in his prime. By the time Suggs left after 2018, Suggs was out of his prime by then. But they really haven't had a guy like that since prime Suggs. And now you get Maxx Crosby. And if you were looking for a guy that could be a Suggs-type player, you sure as heck got one of the few pass rushers in the game of football that can give you that. He's up there in the likes of TJ Watt and Myles Garrett. But what makes this move so significant and so unbelievable is that they've never done this before. Never. And that's why, to me, this screams Steve Bisciotti. Eric DeCosta made this move as the GM, but this screams to me, Steve Bisciotti told Eric DeCosta, get me this guy. Because the Ravens don't do this. They don't trade first-round picks at all, especially for a veteran player or a player of this guy's caliber. They don't do this. They don't do this. This is clearly Steve Bisciotti telling Eric DeCosta, hey, dude, I'm done with the draft picks. I don't care about draft picks. You see what the Rams just did? I don't care about draft picks. We have a guy in his prime at quarterback who's going to be 30 pretty soon. After this season, he'll be 30. This is the last year Lamar Jackson's in his 20s. He'll be 30 on January 7, 2027. He'll be 30 after this upcoming season. We're coming off a disappointing season. Get me this guy. I don't care what you got to do. I don't give a damn. And look, we know Steve Bisciotti. If you know his history. Now, again, Steve Bisciotti is not a guy who's in the room and demanding to make moves. He's not that kind of guy. But we've known from the stories that this is a guy who's not afraid to trade his draft picks to get a player he likes. Back in 2002, he was willing to trade his first-round picks to go get Lito Shepherd. The Ravens said no. They went and got Ed Reed. He wanted Lito Shepherd. The Ravens said no. Ozzie Newsome, and they said no. They went and got Lito Shepherd. In 2008, he was willing to trade his entire draft to go get Matt Ryan. And guys like Ozzie and all of them said, no, we're going to hold on to our draft picks, and we're going to draft Joe Flacco. He's been a guy that we have known to be pretty aggressive. It's just that he is also he's also an owner that lets the football guys make the football decisions. And you know what? That's paid off for a long time. That has paid off. You know, down 2025 season aside, for the most part, that has paid off wonderfully. You know, you can't complain with the Ravens' history overall over the last 25 to 26 or so years. I think this year, though, was a bit different because Steve Bisciotti made it clear during his presser that just 2 months ago that he wants to win a championship right now before he sells the team. He wants to win a third title. Again, he won a Super Bowl as a minority owner with Art Modell in 2000, won a Super Bowl as a majority owner in 2012. I think he wants to win another Super Bowl before he eventually sells the team. And he ain't getting any younger, so he wants to win it now. And he's got a quarterback in his prime at 29 years old, a two-time MVP quarterback in his prime. So he wants to win a Super Bowl right now. He wants to win it right now. And I think when I think back to that presser, he you really felt that Steve Bisciotti was just done. You know, he was just a guy that was like, you know what, I'm going to get more hands-on now. And I think, and when you look at Eric DeCosta, again, I'm not really a body language guy. I'm not really someone who says, look at the body language of somebody. But when you look at Eric DeCosta's face during that presser with Bisciotti, he looked down. He looked kind of degraded. You know, he just looked sad. And look, obviously DeCosta was good friends with John Harbaugh, and so was Steve Bisciotti. And Steve Bisciotti was the one who made the decision to fire Harbaugh. It wasn't a DeCosta move. It wasn't anybody else. It was Steve Bisciotti. The front office didn't know. The coaches didn't know. Players didn't know. That was Steve Bisciotti telling him, look, we're letting you go. And again, Steve Bisciotti is John Harbaugh's friend as well. But that was a move that came out of nowhere for DeCosta. And he just looked, and I think DeCosta in that moment knew that he was on the hot seat as well. And I said that when it happened, I came on this show and I said that DeCosta's on the hot seat. DeCosta, or at least his seat had gotten warm. And I think he knew. And I think he knows that they got to win right now. They got to win the Super Bowl right now. And if they don't, and I think DeCosta knows that if they don't win the Super Bowl now, he's fired too. And I think Steve Bisciotti essentially told DeCosta at some point, I fired John Harbaugh. Don't think I won't fire you. I fired John. Don't think I won't fire you. I will. I'll fire you too if we don't win the Super Bowl. Go get me Maxx Crosby. I'm not saying Eric DeCosta doesn't deserve credit for this move. I certainly think he does, because this is not a move the Ravens make. They don't. This is just not something they do. But this feels like, to me, Steve Bisciotti told Eric DeCosta, make this move. Get me that guy. Because your job is on the line as well. And you know it. Go get me that guy. I don't care about draft picks. I don't care about draft picks. I think that this is me. This is Steve. This is, I think, what Steve Bisciotti was saying to the Ravens front office and DeCosta and the whole organization. I don't care about draft picks this year. I do not care. Go get me that guy. We need a premier pass rusher. We need a premier guy. We have a couple of guys available, Crosby, Trey Hendrickson, Bradley Chubb. We have all these guys available. Let's go get one of them. And Crosby's the best out of them. So let's go get that guy. It's a significant move in the history of the Ravens for a lot of reasons. Sure, on the field, sure. He automatically steps in and he's the best defensive player on the roster. He immediately surpasses Kyle Hamilton and Roquan Smith as the best defensive players on the roster. Nate Wiggins, Humphrey, etc. He immediately, Matt Abikwe, if he's back and healthy, he immediately steps in and he's automatically the best player on the defense. He automatically steps in. He's the best. He automatically steps in. He's one of the best players on the entire roster. It's not just big on the field and what he means on the field and what he brings to it. We know what Maxx Crosby brings to the table. He's a great player, great pass rusher. He had 10 sacks this past season with a torn meniscus. Now we'll get to that in a second because those are my concerns. And we'll get to my concerns with this contract, with this deal. But he had 10 sacks last year with a torn meniscus, and he also missed the last 2 games of the season due to being on injured reserve. But it's also significant off the field, and how the Ravens will go this offseason, even with a rookie head coach and Jesse Minter. And by the way, I feel for Minter. I really do. There's a lot of pressure on him. This isn't like Billick in 99. This isn't like Harbaugh in 08, where they're rookie head coaches and they can kind of take it slowly one day at a time, build the team, build the roster. With Billick, he had to teach the team how to win and figure out how to win because the Ravens had not won. They had 3 losing seasons before he got there in their short 3-year history at that time. So when they were 599, that was a big accomplishment. And then, of course, they won the Super Bowl the next year later. With Harbaugh, they hadn't won a playoff game in 6 years from 2002 to 2007. They had missed the playoffs 3 of the previous 4 seasons. They had missed the playoffs in 2007 after a great 2006 and were 4-2 to start that season, lost 9 in a row. Jonathan Ogden had retired that offseason. They still were looking for a quarterback. Obviously, Billick was looking for a quarterback as well. But Harbaugh Harbaugh exceeds expectations, makes the playoffs, and goes all the way to the championship game. And then year 5, they win the Super Bowl. This isn't like that, where they could build the team and just take it one step at a time. This is a roster that Jesse Minter was stepping before the Maxx Crosby trade and was essentially saying, win now. You got to win now, dude. And now you get Maxx Crosby, one of the most premier guys, best pass rushers in the game. That now everything is on Jesse Minter. Everything is on this guy. And he hasn't even coached a game yet in his career. He hasn't even coached a practice yet, let alone a game. He hasn't even coached a practice yet, let alone a game. Not even a practice, let alone a game. Sounding a bit like Allen Iverson right now, but still, the point stands. For a rookie head coaches don't win the Super Bowl. They don't win the Super Bowl. They just don't. They just don't. Second year, sure. Brian Billick did. Third, fourth, fifth, Mike Tomlin did. Of course, recently Mike McDonald did. Third, fourth, fifth year, sure. John Harbaugh did. Mike McCarthy, I believe, was in his, 06, 7, 8, 9, 10. He was in his 5th year as well when he won the Super Bowl. Sean Payton, he got the job in 06. They won the Super Bowl in 09. That was year 4. You can win the Super Bowl after your first year, but in your rookie year, doesn't happen. You don't win the Super Bowl in your rookie season. You just don't. Just doesn't happen. And getting to the Super Bowl, a rookie head coach hasn't gone to the Super Bowl since 2009 with Jim Caldwell. Ironically enough, 2009. That was Jim Caldwell in 2009. That was his first time as a rookie coach as well. Bill Callahan, of course, as we know, in 2002, made the Super Bowl his rookie year with the Oakland Raiders after they traded away John Gruden to the Bucs. But it does, so we haven't had a rookie head coach that has gotten the Super Bowl since 2009, and it just simply doesn't happen when a rookie head coach wins the Super Bowl, period. So now, but now with this, with the roster they already had and the quarterback they already had, now you get Maxx Crosby to add into that. There is insurmountable pressure on Jesse Minter in his rookie season. So, there's a lot on his plate, and I feel for him. It's a lot on your plate, and he's going to have to be up to the task, and he's going to have to be ready for it. Like I said, he hasn't even coached a practice, let alone a game. So like I said, you got that factor, and you got their strategy overall into this offseason. This might just be the one-off season where the Ravens just say, you know what? We got to win the Super Bowl now. We got to win it now. Let's just go all in, win out now. Forget the draft picks. Forget developing players. Forget our strategy that we have done for 30 years. That, yes, has given us a lot of success. Yes, has given us a boatload of wins. Yes, has given us a boatload of postseason success and 2 Super Bowl wins. Everything. Maybe this is just the one-off season where the Ravens say, we're trying something else. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to make big trades. We're going to pay big free agents or something, because now you don't have a first-round pick next year and in 2027. So maybe this is just that one-off season where the Ravens say, we're going all in. It's just a complete 180 of what they've been for 30 years. Complete 180. And look, it's not out of the ordinary. A team trades 2 first-round picks for a premier player. It's technically really not out of the ordinary for any team in the National Football League, but it's out of the ordinary for the Baltimore Ravens because they don't do this. They just don't. I'm sounding like a broken record, but it's true. This is not a move they typically make. But this is also not a typical offseason. John Harbaugh, after 18 years, is fired. Here comes a rookie head coach in Jesse Minter, essentially brand new coaching staff with Declan Doyle as the offensive coordinator. Anthony Weaver was brought back. Technically, he was brought back. He was here before from 2020 to 2022. And he was brought back now as defensive coordinator, although Jesse Minter is going to be the one calling plays. Anthony Levine got called up as a special teams coordinator now. He got promoted as a special teams coordinator. Of course, other new coaches all around the staff. Even bring in a guy like Rich Dill from rugby to help with their training, So this is it's a very unprecedented, interesting offseason for the Ravens that is just not out of the ordinary. So, and now a few days before the tampering period starts and free agency officially begins on Wednesday, they make a move like this, a move they've never made before, trading 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby. So, and now we'll get to the obvious risks of this. Number one, you traded 2 first-round picks. You did. And you still have other needs. Tyler Linderbaum, who knows? You might need a center. So that means you'll need a center and, of course, a guard. You'll have Stanley still, you have Rosengardner, but you probably will need Linderbaum and maybe 1 or 2 guards. So you probably need a center, maybe 1 or 2 guards. So Isaiah Likely might leave in free agency, so you still have a hole at the second tight end. Also, Charlie Kolar is also a free agent as well, I believe. So you probably will have to need a third tight end if you can't re-sign him. But Isaiah Likely, Linderbaum, his market seems to be going up and up and up with all these centers available. Garrett Bradbury just got traded to the Bears after their center retired. So they fill out their center position. But Linderbaum's price keeps getting up and up. So who knows if they re-sign him? Who knows if they're able to re-sign him? Like I said, you might need a guard and a tackle. You might need a couple of other guards after that. You probably need a second receiver opposite Zay Flowers. Defensively, I think they do need to add to the corner room. I think they also need to add to the middle linebacker room. So you have other needs. So there's other needs on this team that you could use those first round picks for, but That just means you have to get the second and third and fourth round picks right. That just means those second and third or fourth round picks you're going to have in 26 and 27, they make that more of a must to get right. Now, could they also trade those picks? Because like I said, this seems to be not an ordinary Ravens offseason. Could they trade those picks? Of course they could. They could certainly trade them for A.J. Brown. Would I get A.J. Brown if I'm the Baltimore Ravens? No, I wouldn't. Too much of a headache on a contending team like Philadelphia, and those drop. And he's a guy who drops the football. And look, come on, Ravens fans, you know a thing or two about guys dropping big passes, okay? He's a big-bodied receiver, obviously, but I don't know if I trade picks for him. I think, especially with the headache that he seems to have caused in Philadelphia and even in Tennessee. So I think I'd stay far away from it. But at this point, who knows with the Ravens? Anything seems to be on the table with them. But we get to Crosby himself. He's obviously still a great premier player, one of the best pass rushers in football. Really good player. However, he's had surgeries, a lot of surgeries over the years. And he's just recently coming off another one. Because, again, he played all season with a torn meniscus, had 10 sacks, which is, again, ridiculous. And just proves the type of caliber player he is. But he is coming off another surgery. And while he won't be 30, he will turn 29 in August, coming off meniscus surgery. So again, there is that risk. There is a risk in acquiring and trading away 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby. There is a risk, but there is the high reward. And I think that's what the Ravens are going for. They're going for the high reward with the fact that he's a guy who can get double-digit sacks. They're hoping that player is still there, which, again, he had 10 last year with a torn meniscus. But they're hoping that he can still be that same caliber player as he continues to get older, even with all the surgeries he's had, and still be a double-digit sack guy over the next several years that they have him. So, but this is a huge win now move for the Ravens. For the Raiders to move on to the Raiders, you may not well here because now you have 2 first-round picks the next 2 years. You're going to get Mendoza, number 1. You now have the Ravens pick at 14, and you're going to have your own pick, which will, barring an amazing season for Mendoza, which I think Mendoza won't have this amazing, incredible season, but I think Mendoza will at least have a solid enough season where you like his promise. But they still should have a high enough draft pick in 2027 to go along with whatever the Ravens have. So, the Raiders, I think, and you can use those picks to build around Mendoza. It's a win-win, I think, for both. The Ravens win because you're trying to win now, and you get the premier pass rusher you've been looking for a while, and the Raiders get draft capital and draft picks they can use to build around Fernando Mendoza. So obviously, it's a win-win for both. But there is the risk of the Ravens where, again, the surgeries for Crosby, soon to be 30 years old. There is that risk with Crosby, but of course, there is still that high ceiling of double-digit sack guy. So a huge, huge move for the Ravens to get. And again, something they've never done before. And this might just be the off season that the Ravens, it's just not your ordinary Raven off season. Just might not be your ordinary Raven off season. And like I said, I think this is Eric DeCosta making this move, knowing that his job was on the line. I think Steve Bisciotti flat out told him, you got to make some big moves here. I think this was Steve Bisciotti telling Eric DeCosta that I don't care about your draft picks. I don't care about your scouting. I don't care about your BPA and stuff that the Ravens have gone for 30 years, has been so successful for 30 years and has led to a lot of winning. I just think this was the owner stepping in and saying, I don't care about that. You need to win right now, And I think DeCosta knew. I think DeCosta knows. Because like I said, I think back to that presser with Bisciotti just 2 months ago and how down and degraded DeCosta looked after everything. So I think this is Eric DeCosta. I think this was a message to Bisciotti, from Bisciotti to DeCosta, saying, make big moves like this. Let's win a championship. because you're on notice here, buddy. So I think DaCosta knows that. So, and I think that was part of the reason why the Ravens made this move. So, but a huge move for the Ravens and a huge move around the NFL as free agency is about to get started. And like I said, the Patriots trade away Garrett Bradbury, another center. Stephon Diggs was released by the New England Patriots. The New York Jets obviously are in the market for quarterbacks. Apparently they were interested in Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is being released by the Cardinals. Tua Tagovailoa is either going to be released if he's not traded. But the Jets are looking at Geno Smith. They reunited with Geno Smith, Carson Wentz. They hired Frank Reich as their offensive coordinator. And Frank Reich obviously is close with Carson Wentz, dating back to the days in Philly and then with Indianapolis. I could see Carson Wentz, Jacoby Brissett, and Kyler Murray. Although it looks like Kyler Murray, it seems to be everything with Kyler Murray seems to be Minnesota. That's what all seems to surround it with Kyler Murray, and makes all the sense. He's the best, in my opinion. He's the best quarterback available in this free agency or in this offseason. They were 9-8 this past year, the Vikings, with no quarterback play whatsoever. Pretty much no quarterback play whatsoever. They were still 9-8. They had a great defense, and you need to make Justin Jefferson happy. Get Kyler Murray, who can at least get him the ball. You need someone who can at least get him the ball, and Kyler Murray can certainly do that. So, but it seems to be the consensus is Kyler Murray is going to be a Minnesota Viking. That's the consensus is. Again, that's what it seems to be all around the league. But again, we'll find out soon. Well, surely soon enough. But we'll talk more about the NFL next week when free agency officially kicks off. I will make one big bold prediction. I mean, it's not really a bold prediction. I think this is kind of obvious. We've known this. I think I've had this feeling for this opinion for the whole time. I think it does revolve around the Ravens. I do think the Ravens will get a deal done with Lamar Jackson over the weekend, or at least on Monday. I think in the coming days, Lamar is going to get paid. So I do think I think that's the next move for the Ravens. They will get the extension done with Lamar Jackson, and I think that's going to happen in the coming days. Could be tomorrow, Sunday, Monday. Either way, it'll happen. It'll happen before free agency begins on Wednesday. That will be my prediction. And I felt that way even before the Maxx Crosby trade. I felt that way throughout the whole time. So because I never thought it'd be anything different. So to me, I think I always felt they were going to get this contract done before free agency began. So I think they will. So I expect the Lamar Jackson extension to be done in the next few days or so. Having said that, from the NFL on to Major League Baseball. Baseball spring training obviously is underway. Obviously, I will do baseball predictions for the season after the World Baseball Classic is over. Once we get to opening day, obviously obviously been watching around as a Mets fan. I've been watching the Mets. Again, not much I can really take away from what I've seen so far in spring training. The only thing I can hope for is the starting pitching to kind of look okay. I think Sean Manaea pitched his first game of the spring today. He pitched pretty well. It's interesting. It's the biggest thing for the Mets this year in spring training has been Carson Bench in the battle for right field. Bench has looked pretty good in spring training. So the Mets have given him that opportunity to take the right field job. And it looks like he's been doing that. He's been hitting really well in spring training. Now, Mike Tauchman, who they signed, has done a good job as well. So it looks like I could see Tauchman being that fourth or fifth outfielder along with Tyrone Taylor. Tauchman's a guy who gets on base a lot. I would like to see Tauchman stay alone on the roster. But it looks like Carson Bench is the way he's playing. He could certainly be the starting right fielder when the season starts. And yeah, I say starting right fielder because Juan Soto was moving to left field this season, which is very interesting. So Bench, it's that I've been watching that starting right field So I've been watching that starting right field competition throughout the whole way. So far in spring training, Bench looks good, but again, this is spring training. Things kind of come along, but he is doing a good job in this competition. And I think at this point, it's still early. It's March 6th, and the World Baseball Classic is going on. It's still relatively early, but we have gotten enough spring training games to kick off. Bench, I would say, has the lead. for the starting right field position, so just slightly over Mike Talkman, who's done a good job as well. But they like Benj a lot. They like him a lot. In terms of the starting pitching, McLean and Holmes are pitching in the World Baseball Classic for Team USA. The guys you're looking for are Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea. Freddie Peralta has pitched pretty well in spring training so far. Not a surprise. Noah McLean pitched all right in spring training. Not a surprise. Clay Holmes has looked good so far in spring training. Not really a surprise. But the two guys you're looking at, David Peterson as well, but the two guys you're looking at are Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga. Can they stay healthy, and can they be productive? Can Senga stay healthy and be more of his 23 self and his first half of last year's self? And can Sean Manaea stay healthy and be what he showed in 2024 that gave the Mets reason to give him that contract? So those are the big things I'm looking for. They're the two question marks to me in that rotation. They're the two big question marks to me in that starting rotation, Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga. And the bullpen's interesting. The bullpen is interesting. And it all depends on Devin Williams. Devin Williams pitched today. He actually pitched pretty well today in spring training. It all depends on him. If Devin Williams is doing well in spring training in the bullpen, then the Mets bullpen will do well. If he struggles, then that bullpen is going to be a bit of a mess, because then they're going to have to pick pieces away and see which one fits or not. But Devin Williams, that bullpen to me rides on Devin Williams the same way it rode on Edwin Diaz for 7 years or so. But it rides on Devin Williams. In terms of what I've seen in terms of their defense, obviously they are making a heavy initiative to get better on defense, especially on the infield. Now, Bo Bichette has looked okay at third base, but there has been some difficulties. It's going to take some time. I think throughout early mistakes that Bichette might make, or even Polanco might make, or even Soto might make at left field, although Soto's not particularly new at left field. He has played left field before, so I should leave him out. But in terms of Bichette and in terms of Polanco, there might be some hiccups to at least start the season with them. So, and that's what I've seen with Bichette so far. He's looked okay in spurts, but there's also been a couple of occasions where he struggled. But with Bichette, it might be a thing where you're going to have to take it day by day and game by game at third base. Again, it's a new position for him. Same with Polanco at first. One player I think I've really liked so far in spring training, just again, by watching the Mets, is Francisco Alvarez. And they're going to need him to play well. And he's lost 10 pounds. Alvarez has dropped weight and lost 10 pounds. But they're going to need him to stay healthy. He stays healthy and he hits well. He could be that franchise catcher they showed just a few years ago that they had high expectations for. But I'll make so those are, I guess, just small notes for me that I've noticed so far in spring training over the first couple of weeks of it. And just knock on wood, if you're a Mets fan, again, if you're any baseball fan, you just knock on wood, you hope everyone stays healthy. Again, I will make my full prediction for Major League Baseball in the season in a few weeks, just after the World Baseball Classic is over. And, and opening day is a day or so away. So, but I will make that after the World Baseball Classic is over. Speaking of the World Baseball Classic, today was the first official day of the World Baseball Classic. Team USA, in their first game of action against Brazil, won 15-5. Aaron Judge started the scoring off for Team USA with a 2-run homer. Surprise, surprise. And Team USA was off from there. Although Brazil did cut the lead to 7-4, made it close, but Team USA ended up scoring 7 runs in the top of the ninth to pull it away and make it a 15-5 win. Japan against Chinese Taipei won 13-0, highlighted by a Shohei Ohtani grand slam. Again, to no one's surprise. And the Dominican Republic beat Nicaragua 12-3. I think these are the 3 teams that are going to be the big favorites here. Team USA, this is as stacked of a team as the United States have had in the World Baseball Classic. And obviously 3 years ago, they came so close before losing to Japan in the finals. But this is as good of and stacked of a team as Team USA has had in a long time since in the World Baseball Classic. This should be their year to win this thing. And you look at that lineup 1 through 9, Bobby Witt, Aaron Judge, Kyle Schwarber, Kyle Riley, all of them. It's fantastic from top to bottom, that lineup. So they are the favorites coming in, but I think Japan and Dominican Republic are the other teams to watch. It could very well come back. It very well could be Team USA versus Team Japan in the finals again. Could very well be that again. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Cuba defeated Panama 3-1. Venezuela defeated the Netherlands 6-2. Mexico defeated Great Britain 8-2. Puerto Rico shut out Colombia 5-0. We'll get back to that game in a bit. Chinese Taipei is currently leading the Czech Republic 6-0. Yesterday, in the first couple of games, Australia beat Czech Republic 5-1, and Korea beat the Czech Republic 11-4. And again, those are the exhibition games. But again, I want to go back to the Puerto Rico game for a second. Puerto Rico beat Colombia 5-0. Edwin Diaz came in and closed that game out for Puerto Rico in the ninth inning. And I know there's a lot of Met fans out there that are ticked at him, or some baseball fans out there that think he was ring chasing or whatever. Me, on the other hand, I have the opinion of, he wanted to win a championship. The Dodgers gave him that best chance to win a championship. Look, I can't really look at a player and go, oh, how dare you? Look, they want to win a ring. And teams like the Dodgers give you the best chance to win a ring. All right, you do what's best to win yourself a championship and get you a ring. I can't go crazy on a player for that. But that being said, but this is not really about that. If you know, with Edwin Diaz in the World Baseball Classic 3 years ago, Diaz suffered that horrific knee injury. It was a freak injury. He was celebrating on the mound after they won their game against the Dominican Republic, and he suffered that torn knee, and it cost him the entire season. And you know that he was itching to get back out there 3 years later in the World Baseball Classic and redeem himself and pitch the way he knows how to pitch and represent his country. And he went out there tonight in the ninth inning. I thought it was really cool. Fox Sports broadcast did his entrance. He came out to Timmy Trumpet. Kind of an Edwin Diaz outing. He gave up a base hit, a wild pitch, but he struck out 3 in a row after that. So that's it's a bit of an Edwin Diaz outing. He gave up a base hit, wild pitch is there, kind of off to begin, but then turns it on, strikes out 3 in a row. Like, that's Edwin Diaz. He may look rocky in a bit, in spurts. He may look rocky for a lot of the outing, but he's that talented and that good where he can strike out the side in 10 or so pitches and get out of it and win the game for you. But he did that today for Team Puerto Rico to win the game. And I was happy for him. It was really cool and happy to see him out there in the World Baseball Classic just 3 years after that horrific knee injury that cost him his entire season. You just know he was trying to get back out there to get back in that same spot. Darn well he was, because he didn't want that to be his lasting memory of being in the World Baseball Classic representing his country. So I was happy I know there's a lot of Met fans out there that are ticked at him and whatever, but I'm not one of them. I'm sure there's a lot of baseball fans outside the Dodgers that are ticked at him for leaving as one of the best closers in baseball to join the Dodgers, who are already the best team in baseball. But for the sentimental reasons, for knowing what happened to him 3 years ago, I was happy for him, and I thought it was really cool. So I think that was a cool moment to see Diaz back out there in the World Baseball Classic doing his thing. But this should be a fun tournament. We'll keep up with the World Baseball Classic throughout the games and into next week when we do our next show on Wednesday. But we'll keep up with the World Baseball Classic, because I think I love the World Baseball Classic. I think it's fun. I think it's exciting. I think it's great. I know there are a lot of people that have different opinions about the World Baseball Classic because it's so close to the start of the regular season. And look, I feel you, because as much as I love it and enjoy the World Baseball Classic, I think it's a lot of fun, and I love seeing the players. The players love it. They love playing with pride and love of their country. I think that's awesome. But again, yeah, the fan in me, or a fan of a team, a guy who has a team of interests every baseball season, with this being the New York Mets, obviously. Yeah, you hope that, you knock on wood and hope everyone stays healthy. Juan Soto is playing for the Dominican Republic. I'm knocking on wood to hope he stays healthy. Clay Holmes and Nolan McLean are playing for, 2 of our starting pitchers are playing for Team USA. I'm knocking on wood for them to stay healthy. Mark Vientos is playing for Team Nicaragua. I'm knocking on wood, hope he stays healthy. Oscar Brasman, Dominican Republic, knocking on wood, hoping he stays healthy. You are, I'm sure every fan in baseball is rooting for their guys to just stay healthy. So that is the caveat. You're just rooting for your guys to stay healthy, especially if you're a fan of a team. But on the other end, I think it's cool, and I think this year's tournament should be a lot of fun. Like seeing Junior Caminero, he had a home run today to give Dominican Republic the lead. He was jumping up and down or running around second and third. It was awesome. He was pumping his fist. It was awesome. Baseball needs that. Yeah, of course, you're hoping he doesn't get hurt while doing it, but baseball needs that. Baseball needs that kind of excitement, especially during the spring training period, heading into before the start of the regular season. I do think or at least sometime after it, but that's also after a 162 game season, sometimes postseason, but baseball needs that. My point is baseball needs that. I'm watching Caminero jumping up after a big 2-run homer and he's pumping his fist. Like baseball needs that. Baseball needs that emotion, and they need to have that. They have to have that. And that brings the fans in. And that's what makes the World Baseball Classic great, so, but it should be a fun tournament. My favorites, I do think Team USA is the favorite, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's Japan and Team USA again in the finals. But I do think Team USA is the favorite in this tournament. But having said that, we'll talk more about Major League. We'll talk more about the baseball season as a whole once the Classic is over. And I'll make my predictions for the upcoming season. I'll make my predictions for the divisions, the wild cards, who I think my surprising teams will be, who my disappointing teams might be, who's going to be my MVPs, who's going to be the Cy Young Award winners, and who I think is going to represent the National League and the American League in the World Series. So that'll be after the World Baseball Classic is over. Do a couple of things on wrestling. Tonight, Friday Night SmackDown, Cody Rhodes is the new WWE Undisputed Champion, to the surprise of absolutely nobody. If you watched the Elimination Chamber on Saturday, right, and saw Randy Orton win, and what happened after the show, no, to the surprise of nobody, Cody Rhodes is now a 3-time WWE champion. And look, I figured Drew McIntyre's title reign was done the moment he had that kind of underwhelming match with Sami Zayn at the Royal Rumble. And then the night after, or at least the 2 days after the Rumble on Raw, CM Punk and Roman Reigns had that promo where they just completely just threw a pile of dirt all over Drew McIntyre. To me, that wasn't just Punk and Reigns in their promos, as wrestlers and character for their storyline. That was also backstage and the writers and creative teams saying Drew McIntyre is just not on their level, and we don't see him that way. And I think that was just, to me, that told me Drew was not walking into WrestleMania as champion. And the minute I saw Randy Orton win at the Chamber, you knew that Randy was winning. The minute you saw Randy win at the Chamber, you knew Randy was winning. You knew Cody was winning on Friday. You knew Cody was getting the belt back. So now with Cody as the champion, now Cody wins the belt off a Jacob Fatu interference, which again, you kind of knew that was going to happen. So it will be Cody Rhodes, Jacob Fatu versus Drew McIntyre. Looks like at WrestleMania. And the night one main event. We have the night one main event. It looks like that will be the main event. Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton. A match 4 years in the making. We've been kind of waiting for this feud ever since Cody came back. They've teased it here and there. I think they had a match at King of the Ring about a year or so ago, but for when Cody won King of the Ring. But they have been teasing a full-blown feud and a full-blown storyline with these two for the better part of 4 years. And we've been waiting for this really ever since the day Cody Rhodes came back at WrestleMania 38. We've been kind of waiting for this. So we're going to get it. And believe it or not, this is only Randy Orton's third WrestleMania main event, which is pretty crazy. But they're going to main event WrestleMania together. If you love your legacy lore, if you love legacy and you love legacy lore, 2009, 2010 Monday Night Raw, this is the main event for you. Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton. There's a lot of history they can dive into, a lot of stuff they can dive into with their storylines, and a lot of material they can use to work with that I think can build to this match with the time they have. Unfortunately, they don't have as much time. They only have about 5 or so weeks, but they can still use it to progress it, and not only progress it for WrestleMania, but progress it after WrestleMania. Because this is interesting. I think I have a feeling who's winning night 2, the night 2 main event. But this one, I kind of don't. I don't really know who's winning this one. This is more of a coin toss for me, Cody and Randy. So again, interested to see who goes over in this one. For Drew McIntyre, I feel for him. It just, when he won the belt, it just felt like it was past time. it was one of those things. I think back to, say, Dean Ambrose or Jon Moxley in 2017 or 2016, excuse me, when he won the WWE Championship. It just felt like it was cool to see him win it, but it was past it. Like he should have been champion a couple months prior, or a year prior, 2 years prior, especially a few months prior. With Drew, was the same thing. It just felt like we were past time for him to win the championship. He should have won it a few years ago. To me, he should have won it a few years ago at Clash against Roman Reigns, but he didn't. And he had that. Now, in the middle was an amazing feud of the year with CM Punk. He had that amazing feud of the year with Punk. But after that, he kind of trended water, kind of questionable booking. And then all of a sudden, he's the champion. And it's like, oh, okay. Didn't see that coming. Don't know if he really should be champion, but hey, that's cool. But it just felt, he didn't feel at that moment that he was the world champion. It was still Cody Rhodes' show. Punk was the main guy as the world champion on Monday Night Raw. Roman Reigns wins the Rumble and chooses Punk, not Drew, without a second thought. So I feel for Drew. I do feel like his title reign was underwhelming. I feel that he was kind of screwed over, literally this time, by creative and by the booking. And I do think they did him no favors. Hopefully, and I don't know if Drew's going to win the belt anytime soon. Who knows when's the next time he gets a chance of that belt, but it looks to be like his next feud is going to be Jacob Fatu. So speaking of Punk and Reigns, they've obviously had two heated segments over the two segments they've had. CM Punk obviously had his title match with Finn Balor, which was fantastic, which I thought was really good. The match in Ireland those two had was really good. And now we're off to the races with Punk and Roman Reigns, and they've really hit the nail on the head. They've really hit the nail here. They've really swung and hit home runs with their segments together. And I think there's just I don't know if they should have any physical contact, but I definitely think after the segment on Raw, we might be getting some physical contact with them. But they're just doing, those two are just doing such a good job building, and it feels like a main event. It feels like a main event. The main event, not night one where it's the main event, but the final match of WrestleMania. It feels like it. They've done a very good job, Punk and Reigns. So I expect more, however long we go and whatever, I expect whatever the ride takes us, I expect more. So they're doing a good job. Penta is the new Intercontinental Champion on Monday Night Raw, thanks to Danhausen. So Dom Mysterio loses the Intercontinental Championship because Danhausen cursed him. Danhausen made his debut at the Chamber back on Saturday. What a difference for Danhausen, and good for him because I love Danhausen. What a difference for Danhausen over the last week. So Saturday he makes his debut out of the box, and he gets cheered at the beginning, but as the debut is going on, Chicago starts to boo him, and that sucked. That hurt. That sucked to see. But then on Monday, the fans started to kind of cheer him, and he curses Dom Mysterio, and then Dom loses the Intercontinental title. And then tonight on SmackDown, I forget where they were tonight. I apologize to the city that SmackDown was hosted. That they hosted SmackDown tonight. I forget where they were, so I apologize. But wherever he was, wherever they were, they cheered him. They were cheering him tonight, and when he did this to The Miz and said, "You are cursed," you can hear the crowd doing it together with him. It took only not even a week for the fans to go from booing him to cheering him, and now we had the fans tonight on SmackDown do the whole "You are cursed" thing in unison with him in the backstage segment with The Miz. Good for him. His shirt is the highest selling shirt on merch. Good for him. I love Danhausen. I hope he succeeds in WWE, and what a difference just a few days make for him, because I was a little bit worried for him after Chicago, but these last two shows, I think he's shown he's going to be fine. Because he's just, look, we need more characters like Danhausen in wrestling. We do. We need more characters like Danhausen in wrestling. We really do. Some might disagree with that, but I think we need more characters like Danhausen in wrestling. TNA, obviously, they continue the whole thing with Steve Macklin and Mike Santana. They will have a title match at the next pay-per-view on Sacrifice. And on AEW, they continued the stuff with MJF and Paige. Paige and Jet Speed dropped the trios titles to the Down Cows family of Kyle Fletcher, Okada, and Mark Davis. No surprise to me. They weren't doing anything with. I don't know what the point of these trios titles are. No one's really had a good reign from aside from maybe one team, maybe aside from Penta, Phoenix, and Pac. The Riders didn't really do anything with them when they were the trios champions. The Ops obviously weren't really doing anything with the trios titles, and it was cut short when Hobbs left. But again, it's just these titles are just there. It just didn't surprise me to see Paige and Bailey and Knight lose the titles so quickly. Back to Kevin Knight. I won't say that AEW screwed him over by losing twice, but I would not have had him get pinned twice. He got pinned. Obviously, he was not going to beat MJF for the WWE Championship, but he did get the visual pinfall. I'm surprised they gave him that, which I think tells you how highly they do think of him. But I would not have had him lose twice. I would not have. I mean, look. Obviously, Paige ain't going to get pinned. He's got the title match with MJF. Speedball Mike Bailey is right there. Speedball Mike Bailey, he's right there. Have him take the pinfall. Don't have Kevin Knight get pinned twice. I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, let's not make him look like a jabroni. I'm not going to say I'm not going to say they screwed him entirely, and I'm not going to say he won't be fine. I think Kevin Knight's going to be fine because I think his performance with MJF was great. And I think they see him very highly, and I think one day he will be a future AEW champion. But I just would not have him pinned twice. Why are we making him look like a jobber or not a jobber, but a bit of a jabron getting pinned twice here? Speedball Mike Bailey is right there. Have him take the pinfall to lose the trios championships. But we'll get into more wrestling the next week. Vengeance is coming up. Vengeance Day is coming up on Saturday with NXT. We got Lola Vice taking on Kalani Joe in the Underground match. I expect Lola Vice to win that match. Joe Hendry versus Ricky Saints for the NXT Championship. I think Joe Hendry retains. We got Blake Monroe against Jada Parker. I think Blake Monroe wins that match. I think Blake Monroe wins, and I think she should win. She should win. Blake Monroe should win the match. She should win. We have Tatum Paxley against Izzy Dame. 50-50 on this one, but I'm actually going to pick. I think Tatum should win this match and win the North American Championship, but I wouldn't be surprised. I will pick Tatum, but I wouldn't be surprised if Izzy Dame wins. And then obviously the big ones on NXT last week was finally the heel turn of Zaruka. Zarya turned on Sol to cost her the championship against JC Jane. And then on Tuesday, Sol Ruka came in, caused a DQ between the match with Zarya and Sol Ruka and JC. So looks like we're going to get at least a triple threat at Stand and Deliver, I would assume, from NXT. So again, we'll talk more wrestling next week after the pay-per-view or PLE or pay-per-view, whatever you want to call it. I still call it pay-per-view. And we'll get into a lot of NFL free agency going on next week as the offseason is truly officially underway in the NFL. And it really started off the last few days with Trent McDuffie getting traded to the Rams. As the Chiefs get a first-round pick, the Kansas City Chiefs quickly have 2 first-round draft picks. That's big, man. The Kansas City Chiefs are coming off, and the Chiefs are coming off a down year. This is like their one down year. Guys, this was their one, and I think, in my opinion, this was their one down year. Teams have come down years. For the Chiefs, this was it. This was their come down year. Now, they're looking to bounce back and strike and get back to the winning track and be back to who they were before. Now they have 2 first-round, and they got work to do. This isn't a great Chiefs team here. They got work to do. They have 2 first-round draft picks to build this team. Get a receiver, offensive line, defensive line, whatever. But they got 2 first-round picks now to help build this team. So don't count out the Chiefs. Look out for them as they reload. I'm not going to say rebuild. I'm going to say retooling and getting back on track. So they lose a good fly corner in Trent McDuffie, but But now they have 2 first-round picks to really get this team back going again, and to help out Patrick Mahomes as he comes back from injury. And for the Rams, like I said, they don't give a darn about first-round picks. They do not care. They don't like first-round picks. I've never seen a team ever in the NFL that does not, or any sport, not give a flying you-know-what about first-round draft picks more than the Los Angeles Rams of the last several years. They do not care. They will not have a first-round draft pick for what, 9 of the last 10 years? That's crazy. But they get but they have a good pass rush. They obviously have a top-flight offense. Matt Stafford's the MVP. They need help at corner. They got one of the best corners in the game, But even still, boy, their future continues to just not be there. It is all about the present for them. Their future is just not there. It's all about the present for them. So, but the Rams get Trent McDuffie, and of course the Ravens do something completely unprecedented and completely just un-Baltimore Raven-like, and for the first time, and something literally the first time in their history, their 30 years, they trade 2 first-round picks for a big premier player like Maxx Crosby. So, NFL free agency is well underway, and the offseason, I should say, is well underway, and we'll talk more about that next week. So, that has been today's show. I'm glad I'm back. I'm happy to be back doing the show. I apologize for taking a month off, but we're back doing the show. I'll be back next Wednesday, if not Fridays, but we're setting it for Wednesdays. So I'll be back next Wednesday to talk more about the NFL free agency, the World Baseball Classic, and more. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. Again, I apologize for being away for a month, but thank you guys so much again. Please give this video a like, share, and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Have yourselves a great night, and I'll see you next Wednesday.